A cargo ship left the port of Southampton, England, bound for New York, 3,400 miles of open Atlantic Ocean, no land, no shelter, no reason for any bird to be there. And yet, on the second morning out of port, a sailor noticed something, a single herring gull following the ship, not circling, not drifting on thermals, following, keeping pace, matching the ship's speed exactly, mile after mile. The sailor mentioned it to a colleague, who mentioned it to the captain. The captain had crossed the Atlantic 41 times. He had seen gulls follow ships before, but usually for a few hours, near the coast, where food was plentiful. This bird had been following for 36 hours. They were now 800 miles from the nearest land, and it was still there. 3 days later, when the ship entered New York Harbor, the gull was still following. It had crossed the entire Atlantic Ocean, behind a cargo ship, alone, 3,400 miles, in 3 days. The sailors stood on deck watching it, and nobody could explain why. Not why it started, not why it continued, not why a bird built for coastal waters had just crossed the largest ocean on Earth, behind a container ship. Today we are going inside one of the most overlooked mysteries in the natural world. Why do seagulls follow ships? What do they know about navigation that we don't? What keeps them following for days, across waters where nothing should keep them alive? And why does the answer tell us something extraordinary about intelligence, survival, and the hidden abilities of a bird that most people have completely underestimated? By the end of this video, you will never look at a seagull the same way again. Let us start with an honest admission. Seagulls are not a bird that most people take seriously. They are everywhere. They steal chips from tourists, they make noise, they congregate in parking lots. They are so common that most people stopped seeing them years ago. And that is precisely why what they can do is so surprising. Because behind the ordinary exterior, behind the chip stealing and the parking lot congregating, is a bird with navigational abilities that have genuinely puzzled scientists. A bird with survival strategies refined across millions of years. A bird that has figured out how to extract resources from one of the most challenging environments on Earth, the open ocean. Seagulls are not coastal birds that occasionally venture out to sea. They are ocean birds that happen to be comfortable near coasts. The difference matters. An ocean bird is built to survive where there is no land, no fresh water, no shelter, no guaranteed food source. Everything must be found. Everything must be calculated. Everything must be survived. And the seagull does this with a brain the size of a walnut, using systems that researchers are still working to fully understand. The first thing to understand about why seagulls follow ships is that they are not following ships. They are following opportunity, and recognizing opportunity in the middle of the open ocean requires abilities that go far beyond what most people credit this bird with having. To understand why a seagull follows a ship, you first need to understand what a ship does to the ocean around it. A large vessel moving through water creates several things simultaneously. The first is a pressure wave ahead of the bow. The second is a turbulent wake behind the stern. The third is a column of disturbed water, stretching for miles behind the ship. That brings deep water organisms to the surface. Fish that would normally be 50 meters below the surface are suddenly accessible. Invertebrates that live in the deep column of water are churned upward. Food that was unavailable becomes available in the middle of the open ocean, where finding food can mean the difference between surviving and not. A ship is essentially a mobile feeding opportunity, a moving disturbance that creates access to resources that the flat surface of an undisturbed ocean does not provide. But here is where it gets interesting. The seagull does not simply follow the ship to eat from the wake. If that were all it was doing, it would stay directly behind the vessel, in the turbulent water where the food is. Researchers tracking seagull behavior around ships notice something different. The birds position themselves at specific points, relative to the vessel. Different birds at different points, some at the stern, some slightly to the side, some above the superstructure. Each position corresponds to a different type of opportunity. The stern birds are feeding from the wake. The sidebirds are riding updrafts created by the vessel's hull moving through air. The birds above the superstructure are using the heat rising from the ship's engines to maintain altitude with minimal energy expenditure. These are not random positions. They are calculated. Each bird has identified a specific niche within the ship's environmental footprint and is exploiting it with precision. But following a ship for food explains hours, not days, not 3,400 miles. To understand why a seagull follows a ship across an entire ocean, you need to understand what the seagull is doing navigationally. And this is where scientists ran into something unexpected. Seagulls have a navigation system, not metaphorically, literally, a multi-layered biological navigation system that allows them to know approximately where they are on the planet at any given moment. The first layer is magnetic. Seagulls, like many migratory birds, appear to sense the Earth's magnetic field, using structures in their bodies that function as a biological compass. The second layer is celestial. They navigate by the sun during the day, by stars at night, using the position of celestial bodies to maintain orientation across featureless water. The third layer is the one that surprises people. Smell. Seagulls can smell, not in the way humans smell. Their olfactory system is sensitive enough to detect the chemical signatures of different water masses. The difference in smell between productive fishing areas and barren open ocean. The smell of land from distances of hundreds of miles. The smell of specific currents that carry specific prey. And, crucially, the smell of the ship itself. Engine exhaust, food waste, ballast water. Each vessel has a chemical signature, a smell-based fingerprint that a seagull can track across hundreds of miles of open ocean. The way a dog tracks a scent trail through a park. The ship isn't just a visual target the seagull is following, it is a moving scent trail, a navigational anchor, a reliable point of reference in an environment that otherwise offers none. But here is the question that nobody thinks to ask. If a seagull follows a ship for 3 days and 3 nights across the Atlantic Ocean, when does it sleep? The answer was one of the most surprising discoveries in seagull research. It sleeps in the air, not metaphorically, not as a brief rest, actually sleeps in flight. Seagulls, like several other ocean birds, possess the ability to put one hemisphere of their brain to sleep, while the other hemisphere remains awake and functional. Scientists call this unihemispheric sleep. One half of the brain rests. The other half maintains basic flight control, monitors the environment, keeps the bird oriented, and when the resting half has recovered sufficiently, it wakes, and the other half sleeps. The bird is never fully asleep, and never fully exhausted. It cycles between half-sleep states continuously, maintaining flight, maintaining awareness, maintaining its position relative to the ship for days, without landing, without stopping, without rest in any way that a human would recognize as rest. Researchers who first documented this behavior in seabirds described it as one of the most energy-efficient biological systems ever studied. The brain solving the problem of sleep in an environment where stopping means falling into the ocean by simply never fully stopping, never fully starting either, living in a continuous, half-awake state that is somehow more efficient than either full sleep or full wakefulness. If this bird is completely rewriting what you thought you knew, hit like right now so more people can discover this story. Now here is the part of the seagull story that goes beyond biology, because the more scientists study why seagulls follow ships, the more they find themselves asking a different question. Not what is the seagull doing, but what has it figured out? Human sailors have crossed oceans for thousands of years. We have built increasingly sophisticated navigation technology, compasses, sextants, GPS, satellites, and we have spent enormous resources solving the problems of ocean crossing, energy, navigation, rest, food sourcing. The seagull solved all of these problems millions of years before we did, with a brain the size of a walnut, and without any technology at all. The magnetic navigation We are still learning to fully map. The seagull feels, instinctively, the sleep cycle that allows continuous operation across days of flight is built into its neurology. The ability to read chemical signatures in air and water, to identify food sources and navigation anchors across hundreds of miles, is simply part of how it experiences the world. We spent centuries building ships to cross oceans. The seagull looked at our ships and saw an opportunity, a moving island, a reliable food source, a navigation anchor, a thermal platform, a scent trail, everything it needed, provided by the very technology we built to solve problems it had already solved. And it followed, for 3 days, across the Atlantic, because it could, and because it recognized that we had accidentally built it, a very convenient solution to a very old problem. A bird that everyone ignores, that steals chips, that congregates in parking lots, that most people stopped noticing years ago, can navigate using the Earth's magnetic field, can track chemical signatures across hundreds of miles, can sleep while flying for days without stopping, can cross the Atlantic Ocean behind a cargo ship, and arrive at the other side, still following, still calculating, still finding exactly what it needs, in an environment that should offer nothing. The sailor who first noticed that gull off Southampton didn't think he was watching something extraordinary. He thought he was watching a seagull. He was watching both, because that is what the seagull has always been. Ordinary looking, extraordinary doing, hiding in plain sight above every harbor, beach, and parking lot on Earth, carrying abilities that took scientists decades to document and that we still don't fully understand. The next time a seagull steals your chips, take one more look before you shoo it away, because that bird has almost certainly seen more ocean than you have. If this story changed the way you see a bird, you thought you knew. Subscribe to Birdhearts so you never miss another incredible bird mystery. And tell me in the comments, have you ever seen seagulls following a ship and now wondered what they were really doing? I'll see you in the next one.